What if one of Starfleet's most respected sectors had never truly belonged to the Federation at all? What if, behind its peaceful worlds, its flawless supply routes, and its impossible victories against enemies far stronger than itself, someone had been quietly moving every piece on the board? And what if that someone wasn't an admiral, a president, or even a Starfleet officer? What if he was a god? 30 years from now, historians would call the collapse of Sector 47 the greatest mystery in Federation history. 43 star systems went dark in less than 6 minutes. Starfleet defenses failed without a single weapon being fired. Communications turned against their own commanders. Ships received orders that had never been transmitted. And at the center of it all stood one man wearing the uniform of a Starfleet strategist. His name was Loki. But the Federation didn't know that. Not yet. The first warning came from the USS Resolute, drifting silently above a dying red giant. Its crew had been sent to investigate a communications blackout affecting 12 Federation colonies. Instead, they found something impossible. A fleet. Hundreds of Starfleet vessels floated in perfect formation around the star. No transponders. No active weapons. No life signs. Captain Elena Voss stared through the bridge viewport, unable to understand what she was seeing. "Those ships are ours," Lieutenant Hale whispered. "I know. But they aren't responding." Voss stepped closer to the glass. Every vessel carried Federation markings. Every vessel appeared intact. And yet every bridge was empty. Then the Resolute received a transmission. Not from Starfleet Command. Not from any known Federation channel. A man's voice filled the bridge. "Come." Almost amused. "Captain Voss," the voice said, "you have arrived precisely when I expected you to." The crew froze. Voss slowly turned toward the communications officer. "Trace it." "We're trying." "Can you identify the speaker?" Pause. Then the communications officer looked up. "Captain?" "What?" "There is no transmission." Voss frowned. "What do you mean?" "The signal isn't coming from anywhere." The voice returned. "You've spent so much time looking outward, Captain. Perhaps it's time you looked behind you." Every officer on the bridge turned. Nothing. Only darkness. Then the ship's lights went out. For 3 seconds the Resolute became completely blind. When power returned, the red giant was gone. The fleet was gone. And written across every display on the bridge was a single word. Loki. Years earlier, nobody would have believed such a name belonged anywhere near the Federation. Because Loki had not arrived as an invader. He had arrived as a survivor. It began on a planet at the very edge of explored space. A world called Vera. The Federation had classified Vera as uninhabitable after a series of failed colonial attempts. Its atmosphere was unstable. Its magnetic field fluctuated violently. Storms covered entire continents for months at a time. But beneath those storms was something ancient. Something Loki had been searching for. He emerged from a shimmering green portal in the middle of a ruined city. He wore no armor. No crown. No army surrounded him. Only a dark cloak, battered from his journey, and an expression that had become unfamiliar even to himself. Fear. Loki looked across the ruined landscape. "Midgard," he whispered. But it wasn't Earth. The stars were wrong. The constellations were unfamiliar. And somewhere beyond the clouds, an enormous starship crossed the sky. Loki watched it disappear into the horizon. Then he smiled. "So," he murmured, "this is where the universe has hidden me." The ship belonged to Starfleet. Its crew had no idea that a being from another reality had just appeared on Vera. They had no idea Loki had spent centuries being a god, a liar, a prisoner, a conqueror, and occasionally something dangerously close to a hero. They knew none of that. They only knew that their sensors had detected a human life sign in a region where no human should have survived. The ship descended. A transporter beam surrounded Loki. For one brief moment he considered resisting. Then he laughed. Interesting. The world disappeared. When Loki opened his eyes, he was standing inside a Starfleet transporter room. 6 officers stared at him. A security officer raised a phaser. "Identify yourself." Loki looked at the weapon. Then at the officer. Then at the Starfleet insignia on the wall. He smiled. "Loki." The officer waited. "Loki what?" The god's smile widened. "Just Loki." The security officer glanced at the captain. The captain stepped forward. "Are you from Earth?" Loki tilted his head. "Once." "Are you Federation?" "Not exactly." "Are you dangerous?" For the first time, Loki's expression became serious. "Yes." The captain reached for his phaser. Loki immediately added. But not to you. The room went silent. The captain lowered the weapon slightly. That was the first mistake. Not because Loki attacked. Because Loki had already begun studying them. Their uniforms. Their command structure. Their technology. Their language. Their psychology. The Federation believed diplomacy was a bridge between civilizations. Loki saw it differently. Diplomacy was information. And information was power. Over the following months, Loki became a consultant aboard the ship. At first he was useful. Then indispensable. He could predict enemy movements before sensors detected them. He could identify political weaknesses in alien governments after hearing only a few sentences. He could negotiate treaties that Starfleet diplomats had spent years failing to achieve. When pirates attacked a Federation colony, Loki predicted their ambush. When a hostile empire threatened war, Loki convinced its ruler that peace had been their idea all along. When a Starfleet admiral asked how he knew so much about people, Loki simply smiled. People are wonderfully predictable. But there was something nobody noticed. Every victory created another dependency. Every treaty expanded Loki's influence. Every crisis placed him closer to the center of Starfleet decision-making. And Loki never asked for power. He waited for people to give it to him. Years passed. He changed his name. Changed his identity. Changed his appearance. Sometimes he appeared as a human strategist named Lucas Odell. Sometimes as a Vulcan advisor. Sometimes as an old admiral who seemed to have existed in Starfleet records for decades. The Federation never realized that all those identities belonged to the same being. Loki had discovered something more powerful than magic. Bureaucracy. The Federation was built on trust. Loki weaponized it. By the time Sector 47 was created, he was no longer an outsider. He was the invisible architect behind its prosperity. Worlds that had once been enemies became allies. Trade routes expanded. Piracy disappeared. Border wars ended. Starfleet called it a golden age. Loki called it preparation. Deep inside a hidden chamber beneath the sector's central command station, Loki stood before a massive holographic map. 43 star systems glowed around him. Each one represented a world, a military base, a colony, a fleet, a political alliance. And at the center was Earth. Loki slowly raised one hand. Green energy rippled across the holographic stars. One by one the systems connected. A network, a machine, a kingdom without a throne. Behind him, a woman entered the chamber. Admiral Mara Tverin. One of the few people Loki genuinely respected. She stared at the map. You've been planning something. Loki didn't turn. I've been planning everything. For how long? Since the day I arrived. Mara's expression hardened. You told us you wanted to protect the Federation. I do. Then why secretly control an entire sector? Loki finally turned toward her. His eyes were no longer playful. Because you don't understand the difference between ruling people and protecting them. Mara stepped closer. Then explain it. Loki looked toward Earth. The Federation believes freedom is the absence of control. He paused. I learned long ago that sometimes freedom survives only because someone is controlling the battlefield. Mara shook her head. That isn't protection. What is it then? Manipulation. Loki smiled faintly. Now you're beginning to understand me. Mara reached for her communicator. Loki didn't stop her. That frightened her more than anything. She activated it. Starfleet Command, this is Admiral Tverin. I need an emergency. The communicator went silent. She stared at it. Loki. He walked past her. Go ahead. Mara looked up. What? Call them. She tried again. Nothing. Loki pointed toward the holographic map. Every communication relay in Sector 47 reports directly through systems I designed. Mara's face went pale. You built them? I improved them. You've been listening to Starfleet? Yes. Every transmission? Not every one. Mara swallowed. How many? Loki's expression softened. All the important ones. Silence. Then a warning appeared on the holographic display. Incoming Federation fleet. Mara turned. Who is that? Loki's smile disappeared. That. He stared at the approaching fleet. Is the problem. The doors behind them opened. A Starfleet officer rushed inside. Admiral. We have confirmation. The fleet is coming from Earth. Mara looked at Loki. Why would Starfleet send a fleet here? Loki didn't answer. The officer continued. There's something else. What? The fleet isn't responding to our hails. Mara looked toward the stars. Loki slowly stepped toward the window. For the first time in decades, the god looked genuinely concerned. Because he recognized the formation. He recognized the ships. And he recognized the man commanding them. Loki whispered a name he had not spoken in centuries. Thor. Mara stared at him. Thor. Loki's eyes reflected the approaching lights of the Federation fleet. No. He watched thousands of starships emerge from warp. This isn't an invasion. The lights grew brighter. Loki's expression hardened. It's an execution. And somewhere aboard the flagship approaching Sector 47, a hammer rested beside a command chair. Its owner looked toward the distant stars. Find my brother. The fleet accelerated. And for the first time since Loki had secretly built his kingdom among the stars, the god understood one terrible truth. He had spent decades preparing for every enemy in the universe. Except the one person who knew exactly who he really was. Thor was coming for him. What if Thor had not come to destroy Loki, but to warn him that something far worse had already entered the Federation? For decades, Loki had believed himself to be the greatest player on the board. He had manipulated admirals, redirected fleets, ended wars before they began, and quietly transformed Sector 47 into a hidden kingdom governed by nothing more than information, prediction, and fear. But now thousands of Starfleet ships were crossing the sector. And leading them was Thor. Not an alien warlord. Not a Federation admiral. His brother. Loki stood motionless before the observation window as the approaching fleet expanded across the darkness. Admiral Mara Tverin watched him carefully. You know him. Loki gave a quiet laugh. Unfortunately. Then tell me what we're dealing with. Thor. That isn't an explanation. It is if you know Thor. Mara stepped beside him. Was he always like this? Loki's expression changed. For the first time, the legendary trickster looked almost nostalgic. He was always honest. Mara frowned. And that's dangerous? To someone like me? Loki looked at her. Extremely. A warning alarm suddenly echoed through the command station. Multiple warp signatures. The tactical display filled with incoming vessels. Mara looked toward the communications officer. Open a channel. We're being hailed. Put it through. The main screen illuminated. A massive figure appeared. Long blonde hair. Battle-worn armor. A red cape drifting behind his shoulders. And beside him, resting against the command chair, was a weapon unlike anything Starfleet had ever encountered. Thor looked directly into the camera. Loki. The room became silent. Loki stared back. Brother. Thor's expression was not angry. That made it worse. I have searched across realms for you. Loki smiled. And here I thought you missed me. I did. The smile disappeared from Loki's face. Thor continued. I wish I had come for that reason. Mara stepped forward. This is Admiral Mara Tverin of Sector 47. You are entering Federation space with an armed fleet. Identify your authority. Thor looked at her. You believe this is your space? Mara's eyes narrowed. Yes. Thor turned back toward Loki. That is what frightens me. Loki's voice became colder. What did you find? Thor hesitated. A door. Loki's expression hardened. What kind? The kind that should never have been opened. The transmission ended. Mara immediately turned toward Loki. What does that mean? Loki didn't answer. He was staring at the stars. Because he understood something Thor had not said. A door. Not a metaphor. Not a diplomatic phrase. A real door. Something Loki had encountered before. Something connected to the ancient forces he had spent centuries trying to outrun. Order the fleet to hold position, Loki said. Mara looked at him. You're not going to attack? No. Why? Because if Thor is telling the truth, attacking him would be exactly what our enemy wants. Mara froze. Our enemy? Loki finally turned. Yes. You said Thor was the problem. I was wrong. The lights flickered. Every console on the bridge suddenly went black. Then a single symbol appeared. A green circle. Inside it was a black vertical line. Loki stared at the symbol. His face went pale. Mara noticed. You know that symbol. Loki whispered. I hoped it was dead. A Starfleet technician hurried toward the command station. Admiral, we've lost navigation. Switch to backup. Backup isn't responding. Manual controls? Gone. Mara looked at Loki. What is happening? Loki stepped toward the central display. Someone is inside the network. An enemy? No. Then who? Loki's eyes narrowed. Something. Across Sector 47, the same symbol appeared. On starships. On colony screens. Inside hospitals. On civilian communicators. Even on systems completely disconnected from the Federation network. Then every screen displayed the same message. You were never alone. The message vanished. For several seconds nothing happened. Then the first Starfleet ship exploded. No weapon signature. No torpedo. No beam. It simply folded inward as if space itself had crushed it. Mara stared in horror. Fire suppression. The officer beside her shook his head. There was no explosion. What? The ship didn't explode. He looked at his console. It disappeared. Another vessel vanished. Then another. Then 6 more. Thor's fleet opened fire. Not on Loki's forces. On empty space. Lightning erupted between the stars. The Federation formation scattered. Why is Thor firing? Mara demanded. Loki watched the energy burst. He's not. What? Look carefully. Mara stared. The lightning was moving. It wasn't striking ships. It was striking something between them. Something invisible. Something massive. Then the stars themselves seemed to bend. A shape emerged. At first it looked like a shadow. Then the shadow became a structure. A gigantic black ring appeared in space, stretching farther than any Federation sensor could measure. Mara whispered, "What is that?" Loki answered with a voice barely above silence. "A gate." Thor's transmission suddenly returned. "Loki, I see it. You know what this is?" "Yes." "Then tell me how to close it." Loki stared at the gate. "I'm not sure we can." Thor's eyes narrowed. "You've faced it before." "Not directly." "You're lying." Loki smiled bitterly. "Of course I am." Thor's expression darkened. "Brother." Loki looked at him. "I once found records of this gate beneath an Asgardian ruin." Thor froze. "Our father told us those records were destroyed." "They weren't." "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I wanted to know what was behind it." Thor looked furious. "And?" Loki's voice became quiet. "I saw myself." Thor's anger disappeared. "What do you mean?" "I saw a throne." The bridge fell silent. "A throne beyond time," Loki continued. "A kingdom made from conquered realities. Worlds arranged like pieces on a game board." Mara slowly approached. "And you were sitting on it?" Loki didn't answer. That was answer enough. Thor looked shaken. "You thought it was a prophecy?" "No." Loki looked toward the gate. "I thought it was a warning." The black ring began to rotate. Something moved behind it. Something enormous. Starfleet sensors suddenly detected thousands of new life signs. Mara's voice trembled. "How many?" The technician stared at his screen. "I don't know. Give me an estimate." "There are too many." "How many?" He looked up. "Millions." The fleet went silent. Then the gate opened. Not into another star system. Not into another dimension. Into a battlefield. Thousands of broken worlds floated in darkness. Destroyed planets. Dead suns. Fragments of civilizations. And above them all was a colossal throne. Empty. Waiting. Loki stared at it. Thor whispered, "You've seen that throne?" "Yes." "And you know who sits on it?" Loki's eyes narrowed. "No." A voice echoed through every ship. Every colony. Every communicator. Every mind. Not loud. Not violent. Almost gentle. "Loki." The god froze. The voice continued. "You have built my kingdom beautifully." Mara looked at Loki. "What is that?" Loki didn't respond. The voice laughed. "You always were my favorite servant." Thor raised his weapon. "Show yourself." The darkness behind the gate shifted. A figure emerged. Tall. Cloaked. Its face hidden beneath a crown of black fire. The figure ignored him. Its attention remained fixed on Loki. "You stole my methods." Loki's breathing became heavier. "You copied my magic." The figure stepped forward. "You borrowed my ideas." Loki whispered, "Impossible." The figure lifted one hand. Across Sector 47, every hidden system Loki had built activated simultaneously. Secret defense networks. Surveillance arrays. Emergency fleets. Political override systems. Every instrument of control Loki had created over decades suddenly turned against the Federation. Mara's face went pale. "Loki." He looked at her. She could barely speak. "You didn't build the network." Loki stared at the screens. "No." The figure behind the gate smiled. "You merely finished it." The truth hit Loki like a blade. His entire secret empire. Every hidden protocol. Every manipulated alliance. Every contingency plan. Every emergency system. He had believed they were his. But someone else had been guiding him. Someone had been waiting for him to connect every world. Every ship. Every mind. Every system. Loki's greatest achievement was not a kingdom. It was a doorway. Thor looked at his brother. Loki. The god's eyes were fixed on the figure. What are you? The figure slowly removed its hood. For one impossible moment, Loki saw his own face. Older, colder, proud, and smiling. Mara stepped backward. There are two Lokis. No, Thor whispered. There are three. The black gate expanded. Another figure stepped through. Then another. Then hundreds. Thousands. Each one carrying a different crown. Different armor. Different scars. Different expressions. All of them Loki. Every alternate version of the god who had ever survived long enough to become something greater. Loki stared in horror. What have I done? The crowned Loki stepped closer. You asked the wrong question. Loki's eyes narrowed. What should I have asked? The other Loki smiled. Why did the universe choose you? Then every version of Loki raised their hands. And Sector 47 went dark. One by one the stars disappeared. The Federation fleet vanished from sensors. Thor's lightning became silent. Mara's voice faded. And Loki stood alone in absolute darkness. Then he heard a whisper directly behind him. Now. A hand touched his shoulder. Let us show you what you were always meant to become. Loki turned. And saw a throne waiting for him. Not in the distance. Not beyond the gate. Inside his own mind. The seat was empty. But the crown was already resting upon it. And somewhere in the darkness, Loki finally realized the most terrifying possibility of all. Perhaps he had never secretly ruled Sector 47. Perhaps Sector 47 had been secretly ruling him. Asterisk asterisk. What if the throne inside Loki's mind wasn't a vision at all, but a command center connected to every Loki who had ever existed? For the first time in centuries, Loki was afraid to move. The throne stood before him in a landscape that could not exist. There was no floor. No sky. No stars. Only endless darkness surrounding a single enormous seat carved from black stone and covered in glowing green runes. Behind it floated thousands of fragments of reality. A destroyed Earth. An Asgard consumed by fire. A Federation at war. A universe where the Avengers had never existed. A universe where Thor had become king. A universe where Loki had never been born. And every image was connected. Every reality. Every possibility. Every failure. Loki stared at the throne. I've seen this before. A voice answered from the darkness. You have dreamed of it. Loki turned. Nothing. Show yourself. You already know who I am. Loki laughed bitterly. That's the problem. I know too many versions of myself. The darkness shifted. A figure emerged. It looked like Loki, but older. Its armor was covered in scars. Its eyes burned with ancient green light. And around its neck hung an insignia Loki recognized immediately. The symbol of Sector 47. But twisted. Corrupted. Who are you? Loki demanded. The figure smiled. I am what you become when you stop pretending you want freedom. Loki's eyes narrowed. You're one of them. No. The figure stepped closer. I am you. Loki shook his head. I'm standing right here. So am I. The two Lokis stared at each other. Then the older one whispered. We are not copies. The darkness behind them began filling with images. You call them alternate universes because that makes them easier to understand. Loki watched countless realities appear. But the truth is simpler. The older Loki raised one hand. They are memories. Loki's expression changed. Memories? Every choice creates a path. That's basic multiverse theory. No. The older Loki smiled. Every choice creates a memory somewhere. The throne began to glow. And some memories learned to think. Loki took a step backward. You're saying these universes are versions of us that survived. A thunderous sound echoed through the darkness. Thor's voice. Loki. The illusion shattered. Loki opened his eyes. He was back aboard the command station. Mara was kneeling beside him. Thor stood several meters away, hammer raised. The gate still hovered outside. But the thousands of Lokis were gone. Loki immediately stood. How long? Mara stared at him. 3 minutes. Loki looked toward the gate. It felt like hours. Thor stepped closer. You were gone. I was somewhere else. Thor lowered his weapon. Where? Loki hesitated. Inside the thing. Thor's eyes hardened. Then tell me what you saw. Loki looked at Mara. Then at the Federation fleet. Then at the gate. I saw what happens if we lose. Thor's voice softened. And? Loki looked at him. We don't lose the battle. He paused. We lose reality. A sudden tremor passed through the station. Mara looked at her console. Another distortion. Where? Everywhere. Loki turned. What? She pointed at the display. Sector 47 is changing. The stars outside shifted. Not physically. Historically. For a few seconds, the Federation insignia on the nearest ship disappeared. It became an ancient Asgardian symbol. Then it changed again. A Romulan emblem. Then Klingon. Then nothing. Mara stared. The past is being rewritten. Loki's expression became grim. No. Thor looked at him. Then what? The past is being remembered differently. A Starfleet officer ran toward them. Admiral. We have incoming transmissions from multiple colonies. Put them through. The screen split into dozens of windows. Captains. Governors. Scientists. Civilians. All speaking at once. Who is Loki? He was always here. Our records say he founded the sector. No, he was an admiral. I remember him as a diplomat. He saved our planet. He destroyed our planet. He was human. He was Asgardian. He never existed. Loki watched in silence. The Federation's collective memory was changing. And each person remembered a different Loki. Mara whispered. This is impossible. Loki shook his head. No. He looked at the displays. This is war. Thor turned toward him. Against whom? Loki pointed toward the gate. The enemy isn't trying to destroy us. He paused. They're trying to make us disagree about what is real. Thor's grip tightened around his weapon. How do we fight something like that? Loki smiled without humor. We don't. Thor stared at him. We find the one thing they cannot rewrite. Mara asked. And what is that? Loki looked at Thor. Us. For the first time the brothers stood side by side. Not as king and trickster. Not as hero and villain. As family. The station shook again. A new transmission appeared. This one from Earth. The president of the Federation appeared on screen. But something was wrong. His eyes glowed green. His voice sounded calm. Loki. The god stared. You're wasting time. Thor stepped forward. Release the Federation. The president smiled. You still believe there is a Federation to release? The screen changed. Earth appeared. But it was different. Massive towers rose above the continents. Green energy surrounded the planet. Starfleet ships orbited it in perfect formation. At the center of Earth stood a colossal structure shaped like a throne. Mara whispered. That's not Earth. Loki corrected her. It is. The president smiled. This is what your Federation becomes when it stops pretending. Loki stepped toward the screen. You've altered Earth. No. You've conquered it. No. The president's eyes glowed brighter. We simply removed the illusion of choice. Thor raised his hammer. Who are you? The president laughed. Then his face changed. The human features disappeared. Black eyes. Green fire. A crown. Another Loki. But this one was different. He wore a Starfleet uniform. Perfectly pressed. No armor. No scars. No visible magic. He looked like the ultimate Federation officer. This is Loki Prime, the figure said. Loki's expression hardened. Prime. Yes. The original. No. The figure smiled. The successful one. Loki stared. What do you want? What you've always wanted. I don't know what you're talking about. You do. The image shifted. Loki saw himself as a child. Alone. Unwanted. Desperate to prove he was worthy. Then as a prince. Then as a prisoner. Then as a conqueror. Then as the secret ruler of Sector 47. The figure continued. You spent your entire existence trying to prove that you were more than Thor's shadow. Loki's jaw tightened. You wanted a kingdom. The image showed Loki sitting upon the throne. You wanted people to fear you. Another image. Then you wanted them to respect you. Another. Then you wanted them to need you. Loki whispered. Enough. But eventually. The figure leaned closer. You wanted them to love you. Loki's eyes flickered. Thor looked at him. The other Loki smiled. And that was your greatest weakness. Loki stared at the screen. Why? Because love creates attachment. And attachment creates predictable behavior. The screen went black. A final message appeared. Thor will sacrifice himself for you. Loki froze. Thor stepped forward. What does that mean? The station alarms exploded. Mara looked at her console. Something is approaching. How many ships? She stared. One. The tactical display showed a single vessel emerging from the gate. It wasn't Starfleet. It wasn't Asgardian. It was a massive black ship shaped like a spear. Loki's eyes widened. I know that ship. Thor looked at him. From where? From the throne. The vessel opened fire. A beam struck the station. Reality cracked. Not metal. Not shields. Reality. A massive fracture spread across the command center. Mara screamed. Loki. He reached for her. Their hands almost touched. Then the fracture widened. Mara disappeared. Thor vanished. The fleet disappeared. Everything disappeared. Loki found himself floating alone. But he could still hear them. Mara calling his name. Thor shouting. The Federation crying out across billions of minds. And then another voice. His own. You can save them. Loki turned. The throne appeared again. The crown waited. The voice continued. But only if you sit. Loki stared at it. What happens if I refuse? You already know. Images appeared. Thor dying. Mara disappearing. Earth burning. The Federation collapsing. Billions of lives erased. Loki looked at the crown. Then at the throne. He reached toward it. Stopped. And smiled. Because suddenly he understood the trap. You want me to believe I have only two choices. The voice went silent. Loki stepped closer. But I'm Loki. He picked up the crown. The darkness trembled. I've survived by finding the third choice. The throne cracked. The voice screamed. And Loki did something no version of himself had ever done before. He put the crown on his head. Not to become king. But to enter the system. Green fire exploded across the multiverse. Every Loki screamed. Every reality shook. And somewhere inside the impossible network connecting them all, Loki saw a single thread. A thread leading beyond the gate. Beyond the Federation. Beyond the multiverse. To whoever had created the throne. Loki smiled. There you are. But the moment he touched the thread, he saw something that made even the God of Mischief stop breathing. The enemy wasn't hiding behind the gate. It wasn't another Loki. It wasn't a god. It wasn't an alien. It was something that had been watching every reality from outside the multiverse. And it had been waiting for one specific person to discover it. Loki. Because the moment Loki found it, the creature finally found a way inside. And suddenly the voice whispered, "Thank you." The crown turned black. Loki's eyes widened. "Thor." A distant voice answered. "Loki." The god looked into the darkness. "Run." "Why?" Loki's voice cracked. "Because I just opened the door." Behind him, something enormous began stepping through. And for the first time in his existence, Loki wasn't the one manipulating the game. He was the one being played. The throne had not chosen Loki because he was powerful. It had chosen him because he was the only person clever enough to unlock it. Asterisk asterisk. What if Loki had finally discovered the true enemy, and the horrifying truth was that the creature had been hiding inside Federation history for centuries? Loki floated in darkness. No stars. No ships. No throne. Only the sound of something breathing. Slow. Patient. Almost human. Run. Loki's warning echoed into the void. But Thor didn't move. "I'm not leaving you." Loki looked toward the distant silhouette of his brother. "You don't understand." "Then explain." "I opened the door." Thor raised his hammer. "Then we'll close it." Loki almost laughed. "That's what I would have said." And I was wrong. Something moved behind Loki. The darkness bent around it. Thor's expression changed. "What is that?" Loki slowly turned. He had seen gods, titans, celestial beings, monsters that could devour planets. But this was different. There was no recognizable body. No fixed shape. It appeared differently depending on where Loki looked. From one angle it was a man. From another, a woman. Then an enormous beast. Then an empty silhouette. Then Loki himself. It had no true form because it didn't need one. It was an idea that had learned how to become alive. Loki whispered, "The Witness." Thor stared. "You know its name?" "I know the legend." "Then tell me everything." Loki looked at the creature. The oldest Asgardian text described something beyond the realms. Not a god. Not a being. What then? A watcher. Thor frowned. Watching what? Everything. The creature smiled. And now? Its voice came from everywhere. I am watching you. Thor raised Mjolnir. Lightning exploded through the darkness. The creature didn't move. The lightning simply disappeared. Thor attacked again. Nothing. Loki stepped forward. Thor, stop. His brother looked at him. Why? Because it doesn't fight. What? It changes the rules. The creature laughed. The sound became 1,000 voices. You finally understand. Loki stared. You've been inside the Federation. No. You've manipulated Starfleet. No. You altered history. No. Then what did you do? The creature's face became Loki's. I waited. The darkness transformed. Suddenly Loki saw Earth. Not present-day Earth. Ancient Earth. Human civilization in its infancy. Then the scene changed. The first warp flight. The birth of the Federation. The first Starfleet vessels. The first contact with alien civilizations. Then Sector 47. Loki watched himself arrive. Again. 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 Different realities. Different identities. Different outcomes. But every time, Loki eventually came to the same sector. The witness spoke. You thought you discovered Sector 47. Loki's eyes narrowed. I did. No. The image changed. A tiny starship appeared in ancient space. His crew never knew Loki. Yet the ship's navigation system contained the same green symbol. The same one Loki had seen earlier. Loki stepped backward. What is that? Your beginning. My beginning? The creature smiled. Your first lie. Loki stared. What do you mean? You believe you arrived here by accident. The image showed Loki emerging from the portal on Vera. But you were summoned. Loki froze. No. Yes. Who summoned me? You did. Silence. Loki's eyes widened. The witness showed him another reality. In it, Loki stood before the throne. Older. Proud. Desperate. He was speaking to something beyond the gate. Send me back. The witness continued. You wanted another chance. Loki shook his head. I don't remember this. Of course not. Why? Because you erased your own memory. Loki stared at the creature. The truth was unbearable. He had not accidentally arrived in the Federation. He had engineered his own arrival. He had sent a version of himself backward through reality to build the kingdom that would eventually become the foundation of his future. A perfect loop. Loki had created himself. Thor stepped closer. Brother? Loki raised a hand. Don't. Thor stopped. Loki looked at the creature. You've been using me. The witness tilted its head. No. You manipulated my choices. No. You created the throne. No. Then what did you do? The creature smiled. I showed you what you wanted to see. Loki's expression darkened. That isn't manipulation? It is only manipulation if you believe you were forced. Thor looked at Loki. The god suddenly understood. The witness had never controlled him. It had simply presented possibilities. And Loki had chosen the ones that benefited his ambition. Every secret network. Every political manipulation. Every alliance. Every hidden weapon. Every step toward control. They had all been Loki's choices. The witness had merely been standing beside the road. Waiting. Mara's voice suddenly echoed through the darkness. Loki. He turned. She appeared in a fractured image. Alive. But trapped. Loki, listen to me. He moved toward her. Mara. Thor followed. The witness laughed. You see. Loki stopped. What? You care about her. Mara looked frightened. Don't listen to it. The witness smiled. Your greatest weakness. Loki looked at Mara. Then at Thor. Then at the creature. What do you want? The witness finally revealed the truth. The Federation. Loki laughed. You already have it. No. The creature's eyes burned. I want what lies beneath it. Loki's expression changed. Beneath. The witness showed him something hidden under Earth. A structure buried beneath the planet. Older than humanity. Older than Asgard. Older than the Federation. A gigantic circular chamber. At its center floated a tiny sphere. It looked harmless. Almost beautiful. But Loki recognized the energy surrounding it. Infinity. Not an infinity stone. Something deeper. A seed. A seed containing the blueprint of an entire universe. The witness whispered. The Federation was never merely a civilization. Loki stared. It was a lock. Thor stepped closer. A lock for what? The witness smiled. For the first world. The chamber shook. Mara's image flickered. Loki, what is the first world? Loki looked at her. I don't know. The witness answered. You do. The scene changed. Loki saw the universe before the universe. No stars. No planets. No time. Only one consciousness. Then it divided itself. One piece became matter. One became time. One became life. One became thought. And one became something else. Something that watched. The witness. Loki stared. You were there. Yes. You created the multiverse. No. Then who did? The witness smiled. The first world. Thor's voice became quiet. What happened to it? It died. And this sphere. The last fragment. Loki looked at the tiny sphere. If it wakes. The witness finished the sentence. Everything begins again. Loki suddenly understood. The witness didn't want to conquer the Federation. It wanted to reset reality. Erase every universe. Every civilization. Every memory. Every life. Then rebuild existence from the first world. And Loki's secret network had connected every major system needed to activate it. Sector 47. Starfleet. The multiversal gate. The throne. All of it. A key. Loki's key. Thor looked at his brother. We have to destroy it. Loki shook his head. We can't. Why? Because the moment we destroy the sphere. The witness answered for him. The universe collapses. Thor stared. Then what do we do? Loki looked at the Federation. For once he had no answer. Then Mara spoke. Maybe we don't destroy it. Loki looked toward her. Go on. We separate it. The witness laughed. You cannot. Mara continued. Whatever this thing is, it feeds on connection, right? Loki's eyes narrowed. The network. Exactly. She looked at him. You built a system connecting 43 worlds. Yes. So disconnect them. Loki stared. If he severed the network, the first world could not awaken. But there was a problem. The network was also keeping Sector 47 alive. Without it, billions of people would lose power. Defenses would fail. Starships would become blind. Colonies would be isolated. And the Federation's most strategically important sector would collapse. Thor understood. You have to choose. Loki looked at him. What? Your kingdom. Thor paused. Or everyone else. Loki gave a bitter smile. You really haven't changed. Thor smiled faintly. Neither have you. Loki turned toward the network. For decades he had secretly ruled Sector 47. He had built it, protected it, manipulated it, loved it. It was his greatest achievement. And now saving the Federation meant destroying it. Loki raised his hand. Green energy surrounded the network. The witness screamed. No. Loki smiled. That sounded almost emotional. You will regret this. Probably. The first connection shattered. One star system went dark. Then another. Then another. The Federation network began collapsing. Mara watched the tactical display. 20 systems disconnected. Loki continued. 30. Thor stared. You're killing your own kingdom. Loki's eyes remained fixed on the stars. No. He severed another connection. I'm finally letting it live without me. Then the witness screamed. The black gate began collapsing. The creature lunged toward Loki. Thor struck it with Mjolnir. A shockwave tore through the darkness. The witness recoiled. Loki stared at Thor. Thank you. Thor nodded. Don't thank me yet. Why? Thor looked toward the gate. Because something is coming through. Loki turned. The gate was collapsing. But one object remained. A small vessel. Ancient. Damaged. Drifting toward them. Loki's eyes narrowed. That's impossible. Thor stepped closer. What? Loki recognized the vessel. It belonged to Starfleet. But not modern Starfleet. It carried an insignia from the earliest days of the Federation. And beneath it was another symbol. The same green circle. The same mark. Loki whispered. That ship came from the beginning. Mara stared. Who is aboard? The ship opened. A single figure stepped out. A Starfleet officer. Human. Young. Terrified. And wearing a uniform that should not exist yet. He looked directly at Loki. Are you Loki? Yes. The officer swallowed. I was ordered to find you. By whom? The officer looked toward the collapsing gate. Then back at Loki. By Starfleet. Mara frowned. Which Starfleet? The officer's answer froze everyone. The Starfleet that exists after the Federation dies. Loki's expression changed. The officer continued. We came back because the future has already happened. Thor stepped forward. What happened? Loki stared. And the Federation? The officer's eyes filled with fear. It kneels. The gate collapsed. Darkness consumed the stars. And Loki realized that saving the Federation might not be enough. Because somewhere in the future, despite everything he had done, the gods still won. What if Loki had already conquered the Federation in the future, and the only reason the past still existed was because his future self had sent someone back to stop him? The young officer stood frozen in the command chamber. His name was Commander Elias Vale. At least that was the name written on his uniform. But everything else about him seemed wrong. The uniform belonged to a Starfleet that had never existed. The insignia was unfamiliar. The rank structure was different. And the material of his ship had been engineered from technologies no current Federation scientist had even theorized. Loki stared at him. You said the Federation dies. Elias nodded. It does. When? The officer hesitated. 7 years. Mara's face tightened. 7 years from now? Yes. Thor stepped forward. And Loki rules afterward? Elias looked at the god. Not exactly. Loki's eyes narrowed. Explain. You don't conquer the Federation. Then what happens? You save it. Loki almost laughed. That's not what you said. I said the Federation kneels. Elias looked directly into Loki's eyes. It kneels because you become the only thing standing between civilization and extinction. Silence filled the room. Thor lowered Mjolnir slightly. You're saying my brother becomes a dictator to save everyone? Elias swallowed. I'm saying your brother becomes something worse. Loki stared at him. What could possibly be worse than a dictator? The officer looked away. A necessary one. The word struck harder than any weapon. Mara stepped forward. What causes the Federation to collapse? Elias activated a small device. A hologram appeared. Then Vulcan. Andorian territory. Klingon space. Romulan territory. The major powers of the region. One by one they disappeared. Not destroyed. Erased. Mara whispered. The witness. Elias shook his head. No. Loki's eyes narrowed. Then what? The war. What war? Elias looked toward Thor. The Asgardian war. Thor's expression changed. Asgard doesn't exist in this reality. It does in ours. Then what happened? Elias hesitated. You. Loki froze. What did I do? Nothing. Then why blame me? Because you were the reason they came. Thor looked at his brother. Who? Elias turned toward the stars. The 9 realms. The hologram changed. Asgardian fleets appeared. Klingon warships. Romulan armadas. Federation vessels. Ancient alien armies. All converging on one point. Sector 47. Mara stared. Why would every civilization fight over this sector? Elias looked at Loki. Because everyone eventually learns what you built here. Loki's voice became quiet. What did I build? The first stable bridge between realities. Loki's eyes widened. The network. The hidden connections. The system he had created to control Sector 47. He had believed it was a communications architecture. A strategic network. A system for predicting threats. But it was more. Much more. It was a bridge. A bridge between universes. And every major power wanted it. Elias continued. When the bridge activates, entire civilizations can cross between realities. Thor stared at Loki. You built a road between worlds. Loki shook his head. I didn't know. Elias answered. You weren't supposed to. The room fell silent. Loki turned toward him. Who made it? Elias hesitated. Then spoke. You did. Loki's eyes narrowed. Future me? Yes. Why? To escape. Escape what? Elias looked toward the darkness beyond the station. Your own empire. Loki stared at him. The idea seemed absurd. He had spent decades building power. Why would he ever want to escape it? Then Elias revealed the truth. You won. Loki's expression hardened. What? You defeated every enemy. Elias activated another projection. Loki saw worlds bearing his insignia. Starfleet fleets. Alien armies. Civilizations united under a single banner. Peace across thousands of systems. No wars. No piracy. No political conflict. No rebellion. Perfect order. Loki watched. This. Your empire. Mara whispered. It looks peaceful. It was. Loki stared. Then why did it fall? Elias looked at him. Because nobody was free. Loki said nothing. The future Federation had become exactly what Loki had always feared. A civilization where people no longer chose their leaders. They simply obeyed. There was no war because nobody could rebel. There was no crime because nobody could disobey. There was no uncertainty because Loki controlled every variable. A perfect universe. A dead one. Thor stepped toward his brother. You became what you hated. Loki's jaw tightened. I became what was necessary. Thor shook his head. No. He looked at the projection. You became what you were afraid to admit you wanted. Loki turned away. Enough. But Elias wasn't finished. That's why you sent me back. Loki looked at him. You? Yes. Why you? Because I was your son. Silence. No one moved. Thor stared. Mara's eyes widened. Loki simply looked at the young officer. What did you say? Elias swallowed. I am Elias Loki Vale. The name echoed through the chamber. Loki stepped closer. You're lying. I wish I were. Who is your mother? Elias hesitated. Mara. Mara froze. No. Elias looked at her. I know this sounds impossible. Mara stepped backward. I've never. You haven't yet. Her face went pale. Thor looked between them. Then you're from 7 years in the future. Yes. Mara's voice trembled. And you're our son? Elias nodded. Loki stared at him. For perhaps the first time in his existence, the god had no clever response. No deception. No strategy. Only disbelief. You came back to stop me. Elias shook his head. I came back to save you. Loki laughed quietly. From myself. Yes. Loki looked toward Mara. She couldn't meet his eyes. What happened to you in the future? Elias answered softly. You died. Mara froze. During the Federation War. How? Trying to stop Loki. Loki closed his eyes. And I killed you? No. Elias looked at him. You couldn't. Loki opened his eyes. Why not? Because you loved her. The words cut deeper than any accusation. You could destroy worlds, Elias continued. You could control fleets. You could rewrite governments. But you couldn't kill the one person who still believed there was something good inside you. Mara's eyes filled with tears. Loki looked away. That isn't possible. It happened. Then why am I still alive? Elias looked toward the stars. Because after she died you stopped being Loki. Thor's voice was quiet. What did he become? Elias answered. King Loki. A holographic image appeared. Loki seated upon an enormous throne. A crown of green fire. Thousands of star systems behind him. And beside the throne, Mara's empty chair. Loki stared at the image. He looked older, colder, broken. The Federation kneeled before him. Every world obeyed. And yet Loki's eyes were completely empty. He whispered, I don't want to become that. Elias nodded. I know. Then why did you come here? Because you need to understand why you become him. The room darkened. Elias activated one final recording. A future Loki appeared. Older. Wounded. Standing alone inside a massive throne room. His crown was cracked. His armor destroyed. Behind him were thousands of stars. He looked directly into the recording device. If you're watching this. Future Loki paused. Then I failed. Present Loki stared at himself. Future Loki continued. I thought control would save them. He looked down. It didn't. His voice became weaker. I thought if I knew every possible threat, no one could ever hurt the people I loved. Pause. But knowing everything doesn't mean you can save everyone. The future Loki looked directly into the camera. I built the perfect empire. His eyes filled with regret. And discovered perfection has no room for mercy. Present Loki looked shaken. Future Loki continued. If you are the Loki I remember. He smiled sadly. You will think the answer is more control. The recording flickered. Don't. The screen went dark. Then one final sentence appeared. Let them choose. Loki stood motionless. Thor slowly approached him. You can still change this. Loki shook his head. Can I? Yes. How do you know? Thor looked at him. Because I've watched you change before. Loki looked at his brother. I'm not the same Loki. No. Thor smiled faintly. You're worse. Loki raised an eyebrow. Thor continued. But you're also better. For a moment Loki almost smiled. Then the station alarms erupted. Mara rushed toward the tactical display. We have incoming ships. How many? Her face went pale. Hundreds. Elias looked at the screen. They found us. Loki turned. Who? Elias whispered. The Federation. Thor looked confused. The Federation is on our side. Not this one. A massive fleet emerged from warp. Starfleet. But every ship carried the same insignia. A green crown. Loki stared. That is your fleet, Elias said. The future fleet opened communications. A figure appeared on screen. An older Loki. Not the broken king from the recording. This one looked calm. Confident. Perfect. He wore the uniform of a Federation Grand Chancellor. Behind him stood thousands of officers. He smiled. Hello, brother. Thor raised Mjolnir. Loki stared at his future self. You came back. Future Loki smiled. No. He looked directly into the camera. I never left. The transmission changed. Future Loki's image disappeared. Another figure appeared. Mara. Older. Scarred. Alive. Loki froze. The future version of Mara looked at him. Loki. His voice became barely audible. Mara? She shook her head. You need to listen carefully. Are you alive? For now. What happened? She looked terrified. Your future self found a way to escape death. Loki stared. How? Mara looked toward Elias. Through him. Elias stepped backward. What? Mara continued. He isn't just your son. Loki's expression changed. Then what is he? Mara looked directly at Loki. He is the key to your immortality. The chamber went silent. Elias stared at his mother. That isn't true. Future Mara's expression broke. It is. Loki looked at Elias. The young man shook his head. I didn't know. Mara continued. Future Loki created Elias from fragments of your own essence. Loki's eyes widened. He made him. He made him to carry part of himself. Elias touched his chest. That's why I can hear him. Loki stepped closer. Hear who? Elias suddenly looked terrified. King Loki. The lights flickered. Elias fell to his knees. His eyes turned green. Loki grabbed him. Elias. The young officer looked up. But it wasn't Elias speaking. It was future Loki. Hello, father. Loki released him. Future Loki smiled through his son's face. You finally understand. Loki's voice became cold. Get out of him. I can't. Why? Because I am him. The future fleet moved closer. Future Loki's voice echoed across the station. You thought you were escaping your destiny. Loki looked toward the stars. But destiny was never waiting for you. The fleet surrounded Sector 47. Future Loki spoke one final sentence. Destiny was waiting inside your son. Elias screamed. Green energy erupted from his body. The entire station shook. Thor raised his weapon. Mara shouted. Don't hurt him. Loki looked at his future self through Elias's eyes. And suddenly understood the game. The witness had never needed to control Loki. It only needed Loki to create a future powerful enough to control his past. The war wasn't coming. It had already begun. And the first battlefield was Loki's own family. Because if Loki killed his future self, he might kill his son. But if he saved his son, he might preserve the future where the Federation kneels. Asterisk asterisk. And outside the station, thousands of ships raised their weapons. The God of Mischief finally faced the one opponent he could never outsmart. Himself. What if Loki had to choose between saving the son he never knew and destroying the future version of himself? And what if the only way to save one was to sacrifice the other? Elias stood in the center of the command chamber, suspended inside a storm of green energy. His body remained still. But his eyes were no longer his own. They belonged to King Loki. The future Loki smiled through the face of his son. You've become sentimental. Present Loki stared at him. I've become tired of people pretending they understand me. I understand you better than anyone. You're me. Exactly. Thor stepped forward. You're using a child. Future Loki looked toward him. A child? He laughed. Thor, you still think time makes people what they are. The green energy around Elias intensified. He was created from us. Loki's expression hardened. Created? Yes. You're saying he's artificial? No. Future Loki smiled. He is the best parts of us. Elias suddenly gasped. The green energy vanished. He collapsed. Loki caught him before he hit the floor. Elias. The young man opened his eyes. Father? Loki froze. Elias looked terrified. I can hear him. Who? Me. Loki's face tightened. What does he say? Elias swallowed. He says you're going to lose. A massive explosion shook the station. Mara looked toward the tactical display. Future fleet is moving. Thor raised his hammer. Then we move first. Loki stood. No. Thor stared. What? We don't attack. They've surrounded us. Exactly. Loki looked at the fleet. That's what I would do. Thor frowned. You know their strategy. I know my strategy. Then use it. Loki shook his head. No. That's the problem. He turned toward the command center. For decades, I won because I anticipated everyone. He looked at Mara. I knew what they would fear. Then Thor. What they would protect. Then Elias. What they would sacrifice. Loki's expression became grim. But future me knows all of that too. Mara understood. So you can't outthink him. Loki smiled. Not with the same mind. He walked toward the central controls. Then I won't. Loki reached for the network. Mara stopped him. What are you doing? Destroying it. You already severed most of the network. Not enough. If you shut down the remaining systems, Sector 47 loses everything. Yes. Millions could die. Loki looked at her. Then we'll make sure they don't. Mara stared. How? By trusting them. The words sounded almost unnatural coming from Loki. Thor smiled. There he is. Loki ignored him. Open every emergency channel. Mara hesitated. You want civilian access? I want everyone to know what's happening. That could cause panic. Yes. Riots. Probably. Governments could collapse. They might. Mara stared at him. That's your plan? Loki looked at the stars. My plan is to stop being the person who decides what everyone is allowed to know. He activated the channels. Across Sector 47, every screen came alive. Colonies. Starships. Hospitals. Schools. Civilian stations. Loki's face appeared. For decades he had spoken through hidden identities. Now he appeared as himself. No disguise. No title. No false name. My name is Loki. The Federation listened. I have lied to you. Mara watched him. Loki continued. I built systems without your permission. I manipulated governments. I redirected fleets. I interfered with elections, negotiations, wars, and treaties. Across thousands of worlds, people stared. I told myself I was protecting you. He paused. But I was also protecting myself. Silence. Loki looked directly into the camera. I wanted a universe where nothing could surprise me. His voice softened. I wanted a universe where no one I loved could ever be taken from me. He looked toward Mara. That desire turned me into something I swore I would never become. A Starfleet officer on a distant colony whispered. Is he confessing? Loki answered. Yes. Then something unexpected happened. A civilian transmission came through. An elderly woman appeared on the screen. Are you asking us to forgive you? Loki looked surprised. No. Then what do you want? I want you to choose. The woman stared. Choose what? Whether I deserve to remain your protector. The transmission ended. Then another appeared. A Starfleet captain. You manipulated my entire command. I know. You saved my crew twice. I know. I hate you. Loki nodded. You should. The captain paused. But I'm still here. Loki's expression softened. Then keep choosing. One by one people began responding. Not with obedience. With decisions. Some demanded Loki's arrest. Some demanded his execution. Some thanked him. Some cursed him. Some simply watched. For the first time, Loki allowed the Federation to decide what it thought of him. And something changed. The Green Network began losing power. Future Loki screamed through every channel. Stop. Loki looked toward the tactical display. His future self appeared. You don't understand what you're doing. Loki smiled. I understand perfectly. You're weakening the Federation. No. You're destroying the structure that keeps civilization alive. Loki shook his head. I'm destroying the structure that makes civilization dependent on me. Future Loki's expression became furious. You think freedom will save them? No. Loki looked directly at him. I think people deserve the chance to save themselves. Future Loki laughed. That's what you tell yourself because you're afraid. Afraid of what? Losing them. Loki went silent. Future Loki leaned closer. You know what happens when you stop controlling everything? Images appeared. Mara dying. Thor falling. Elias screaming. Worlds burning. Children crying. Starships exploding. Loki watched. You'll lose them. Future Loki's voice became softer. And I won't. Present Loki stared. You're wrong. Future Loki smiled. You're already becoming me. Loki looked at his hands. Green energy flickered across his fingers. For a moment he saw the crown. He saw the throne. He saw himself sitting upon it. Then he heard Mara. Loki. He turned. She was standing beside him. Not the future version. The real Mara. You don't have to win. Loki looked at her. What? You don't have to defeat yourself. She stepped closer. You just have to refuse to become him. Loki stared into her eyes. You know that may cost us everything. Yes. And Elias? Yes. And Thor? Yes. You're willing to risk all of it? Mara smiled sadly. I've spent my entire life serving a federation built on the idea that no one person should control everyone's future. She touched his hand. So yes. Loki looked at her. Then at Elias. Then at Thor. The decision came quietly. Not with thunder. Not with magic. Not with a grand declaration. Loki simply removed the crown. The moment it left his head, every green signal in Sector 47 vanished. Future Loki screamed. No. The future fleet began losing power. Starships drifted. Weapons shut down. The green insignias disappeared. But Elias collapsed. Loki caught him. Elias. The young man's body was freezing. Thor rushed toward them. What happened? Loki looked at the crown. It was connected to him. Elias's heartbeat slowed. Mara checked his pulse. Loki. I know. He's dying. Loki looked at his son. No. Elias opened his eyes. Father? Loki held him tightly. You're not dying. Elias smiled weakly. You always lie. Loki laughed through tears. Yes. Elias closed his eyes. But this time? Loki's voice broke. I'm telling the truth. The station suddenly shook violently. Mara looked toward the tactical display. Something was emerging from the collapsed gate. Not a ship. Not a creature. A planet. A dead planet. Black clouds covered its surface. At its center stood an enormous structure. The throne. Thor stared. How is that possible? Loki looked at the planet. The witness. A voice echoed through the station. You have made the correct choice. Loki looked around. Show yourself. The witness appeared. But this time it didn't wear Loki's face. It wore Mara's. Loki's expression froze. The creature smiled. You sacrificed control. Loki stepped forward. Leave her face alone. You still don't understand. The witness looked toward Elias. He was never the key. Loki froze. What? The crown was never the key. Thor raised his hammer. Then what is? The witness pointed toward Loki. You. Loki stared. No. Yes. The creature revealed the final truth. The first world cannot awaken through technology. The dead planet began glowing. It cannot awaken through the network. The throne appeared above it. It cannot awaken through magic. The witness smiled. It requires a consciousness capable of containing every possible reality. Loki understood. Me? Yes. You've been guiding me toward this. No. The witness smiled. You have been guiding yourself. Loki stared. Every manipulation. Every secret. Every choice. Every attempt to protect the Federation. Every desire to control the future. All of it had shaped his mind into the one vessel capable of holding the first world. The witness had not created Loki. It had cultivated him. Thor stepped forward. Then we'll destroy him before you can use him. Loki looked at his brother. Thor. I mean it. No. Thor stared. Loki smiled. That's exactly what it wants. The witness laughed. The dead planet cracked open. A massive green light erupted into space. Every star in the sector began going dark. Elias suddenly woke. His eyes were glowing. But this time it wasn't King Loki. It was something older. Something beyond both of them. He looked at his father. Loki. What? Elias whispered. I can see the beginning. Loki's blood ran cold. The first world. Elias nodded. And the end. Thor stepped closer. What do you see? Elias looked toward the darkness. You. Thor frowned. Me? Elias shook his head. Not you. He looked at Loki. Father. Loki stared. What happens? Elias began crying. You sit on the throne. Loki's heart sank. And the Federation? Elias looked away. It survives. Loki exhaled. Then Elias whispered the rest. But everyone forgets you. Loki froze. The witness smiled. Because now Loki understood the final price. He could save the Federation. He could save Mara. He could save Thor. He could even save his son. But to prevent the first world from awakening, Loki would have to become the anchor holding reality together. And if he did, no one would remember him. No statues. No legends. No stories. No family. No love. Not even hatred. He would become the forgotten god. Loki looked at Thor. Thor seemed to understand. No. Loki smiled. You always hated losing. Thor's eyes filled with tears. And you always loved pretending you didn't care. Loki turned toward Mara. She was crying. Don't. She shook her head. Don't make this decision alone. Loki smiled. For once. He touched her hand. I won't. He looked at the Federation. Billions of lives. Billions of choices. Billions of futures. Then he looked toward the throne. The first world was waking. The witness waited. And Loki finally understood what it meant to rule. Not to command. Not to conquer. Not to control. But to accept the consequences of your choices. He stepped toward the throne. Thor grabbed his arm. Brother. Loki looked back. Thor whispered. If you do this, I will find you. Loki smiled sadly. You always do. Thor released him. Loki walked forward. The throne opened. Green light consumed him. The witness screamed. Reality shattered. And across the Federation, every person suddenly forgot the name Loki. Mara looked at the stars. She felt tears running down her face. But she didn't know why. Elias stared at his father. His memories vanished. Thor closed his eyes. For one brief moment, he remembered a mischievous boy beside him. Then that memory disappeared. Loki sat upon the throne. Alone. Invisible. Forgotten. But alive. And as the first world began to awaken, the God of Mischief whispered the only words that remained inside his mind. I choose them. The universe stabilized. The gate closed. The stars returned. The war ended. The Federation survived. But somewhere beyond time, Loki opened his eyes. And he was not alone. Because sitting across from him on the other side of the throne was the witness, smiling. Now, it whispered, we can finally begin. Loki stared at it. And for the first time since the beginning of creation, the witness looked afraid. Because it had forgotten one thing. Loki was still Loki. And even without memories, the God of Mischief always found a way to lie to the universe. What if Loki had sacrificed his identity to save the Federation? But what if forgetting Loki was exactly the mistake the witness needed everyone to make? For the first time in eternity, Loki sat upon the throne without a name. No title. No history. No family. No memory of Earth. No memory of Asgard. No memory of Thor. No memory of Mara. No memory of Elias. Yet somehow, he smiled. The witness stood across from him. You should be afraid. Loki tilted his head. Why? You have nothing left. Loki looked around the endless chamber. No memories. No identity. No allies. No kingdom. The witness stepped closer. And no one remembers you. Loki looked down at his hands. That's unfortunate. The witness smiled. Why? Because now. Loki looked up. You have no idea who you're dealing with. The witness froze. For the first time, Loki saw uncertainty in its expression. You remember nothing. Correct. Then how can you possibly resist me? Loki shrugged. I don't know. The witness laughed. You have become nothing. Loki smiled. Nothing is difficult to predict. The throne pulsed. The witness moved closer. You think clever words will save you? No. Then what will? Loki looked into its eyes. Curiosity. The witness frowned. Loki stood. What are you afraid of? The creature's expression changed. Nothing. That's a lie. You cannot know that. I don't need to. Loki walked around the throne. You've shown me everything except yourself. The witness remained silent. You showed me the first world. Loki counted on his fingers. You showed me the multiverse. Another finger. You showed me the future. Another. You showed me every version of me. Another. But you never showed me what existed before you. The witness stared. Loki smiled. Why? The chamber trembled. The witness's voice became colder. Because it doesn't matter. Oh. Loki nodded. Then you wouldn't mind showing me? Silence. That silence was the answer. Loki turned toward the throne. Interesting. The witness suddenly attacked. Reality itself bent. Loki was thrown backward. But instead of resisting, he laughed. The witness stopped. What? Loki smiled. I knew it. Knew what? You can only manipulate what someone believes. The witness stared. But I don't believe anything anymore. Loki raised his hands. I don't even know who I am. The witness's power faltered. Because the creature's greatest weapon had always been certainty. It showed people possible futures. It showed them consequences. It made them afraid. It made them choose. But Loki had sacrificed his identity. He had become a blank space. A variable the witness couldn't calculate. The throne began shaking. Loki looked toward it. That's your problem. What? You built a prison for a man you thought you understood. Loki touched the throne. But you forgot. Green energy appeared around his fingers. I built prisons too. The throne cracked. The witness screamed. The chamber exploded. Across the Federation something strange happened. People began dreaming. Not nightmares. Memories. A woman on Vulcan dreamed of a man she couldn't name. A child on Earth dreamed of green light. A Starfleet captain dreamed of a voice giving him impossible advice during a battle. An elderly admiral woke with tears in her eyes. She couldn't remember why. But she whispered, Loki. The name spread. One person at a time. A forgotten word. A forgotten face. A forgotten god. Mara woke aboard a Starfleet medical vessel. She looked around. Where am I? A doctor approached. Admiral Tverin? Yes. You've been unconscious for 9 hours. Mara frowned. Why? We're not sure. She looked toward the stars. Something felt wrong. Something was missing. Then she saw a green reflection in the window. For 1 second, a man's face appeared. Mara froze. Who are you? The reflection smiled. Then vanished. Mara whispered. I know you. On Earth, Thor stood alone on a mountain. The Federation had survived. The war was over. The sky was clear. He should have felt victorious. Instead he felt empty. He looked at his hammer. A strange symbol was carved into its surface. A green circle. Thor frowned. I've never seen that before. A voice behind him answered. You have. Thor turned. No one was there. The voice continued. You simply forgot. Thor's expression changed. Loki. Silence. Then a faint laugh. Thor's eyes filled with tears. He didn't know why. But somehow, he knew. Meanwhile, aboard a Federation vessel, Elias woke from a deep sleep. He immediately looked toward the empty chair beside his bed. Father? No response. He stood. His memories were incomplete. His childhood was intact. His mother was alive. The Federation survived. But there was a hole in his mind. A missing person. A missing face. He searched the ship's database. No result. He tried the Federation archives. Nothing. He tried historical records. Nothing. Then he found a corrupted file. The title read, Project Mischief. Elias opened it. The file contained one sentence. If you are reading this, he has forgotten you. Elias stared. Who? The screen flickered. A second line appeared. Remember him. Elias whispered. Loki. The moment he said the name, green energy erupted across the room. His memories returned. Not all. Fragments. A man holding him. A voice telling him not to be afraid. A crown. A throne. Mara crying. Thor shouting. And Loki smiling. Elias fell to his knees. Father. Across the Federation the same thing began happening. People remembered. Not everything. But enough. The witness noticed. It looked toward the multiverse. No. Loki appeared behind it. Problem? The witness turned. You cannot restore those memories. Apparently I can. You sacrificed them. Yes. You gave them to me. No. Loki smiled. I gave them the illusion that they were gone. The witness froze. You. Loki laughed. Do you really think I would walk into your throne without leaving myself a way back? The witness stared. You remembered? No. Then how? Loki pointed toward the throne. I didn't. He pointed toward himself. I remembered how to forget. The witness attacked. Loki vanished. A dozen copies appeared around the chamber. The witness destroyed one. Then another. Then another. But each time Loki returned. You can't kill an idea, Loki said. You are not an idea. Neither are you. The witness froze. Loki's expression became serious. You told me you were the Watcher. Yes. But who watches you? The witness stepped backward. Loki smiled. There it is. Fear. The creature finally looked afraid. You've been watching the multiverse. Loki continued. But something has been watching you. The throne cracked again. Behind the witness appeared an enormous eye. Older than stars. Older than time. The witness turned. No. Loki stepped backward. I think we found your creator. The witness screamed. The eye opened. Reality began collapsing. The witness suddenly grabbed Loki. You don't understand what you're doing? Probably not. If it wakes, everything dies. Loki looked at the enormous eye. Then we have a problem. The witness tightened its grip. We need each other. Loki smiled. That sounds like the beginning of a negotiation. The creature released him. Listen carefully. Loki crossed his arms. I am listening. The first world was not the beginning. Loki frowned. Then what was? The witness pointed toward the eye. That. The eye opened wider. The entire chamber shook. The first world was its dream. Loki stared. The universe was imagined. Loki's expression changed. And the witness? A guardian. Then why did you try to reset everything? The witness looked toward the eye. Because it is waking. Loki slowly understood. The witness hadn't wanted to destroy reality. It had been trying to preserve the dream. Every manipulation. Every alternate universe. Every loop. Every version of Loki. All of it had been an attempt to keep the sleeping consciousness asleep. Loki looked toward the eye. And now? The witness whispered. It has noticed us. The eye moved. Not toward the witness. Toward Loki. A voice entered his mind. Not words. Feeling. Recognition. The sleeping consciousness knew him. Loki stepped backward. What does it want? The witness answered. You. Loki laughed nervously. Of course it does. The eye opened fully. Across the multiverse, every star stopped moving. Time froze. Every Federation ship. Every planet. Every living creature. Everything stopped. Except Loki. And three others. Thor. Mara. Elias. They appeared in the chamber. Thor immediately raised Mjolnir. Loki. Mara ran toward him. Loki. Elias shouted. Father. Loki stared at them. He remembered everything. His family. His kingdom. His mistakes. His sacrifice. His love. His lies. His failures. His entire life returned in one overwhelming instant. He fell to his knees. Mara held him. You're back. Loki laughed through tears. I was never gone. Thor stepped closer. You look terrible. Loki smiled. So do you. Elias embraced him. Loki froze. Then slowly wrapped his arms around his son. For the first time in centuries, he allowed himself to simply be Loki. Not a king. Not a god. Not a strategist. Not a weapon. Just a father. Then the eye spoke. Every molecule in existence seemed to vibrate. Loki. The god looked up. Yes. You have disturbed my dream. Loki stared. Sorry. The eye widened. You must repair it. Loki frowned. And if I don't? Then I awaken. Thor stepped forward. And what happens then? The eye answered. Everything begins again. Mara looked at Loki. What do we do? Loki looked at the witness. Then the throne. Then the eye. Then his family. A smile slowly formed. I have an idea. Thor groaned. That's usually when things become dangerous. Loki laughed. Exactly. The god walked toward the throne. The witness stared. What are you doing? Changing the rules. You cannot. I've done it before. Loki placed one hand on the throne. Green energy spread. But this time it wasn't controlling the Federation. It wasn't controlling the multiverse. It wasn't controlling anyone. Instead, Loki opened every connection. Every Starfleet channel. Every planetary network. Every mind. Every memory. He connected everyone. Not to command them, but to let them choose. The witness stared in horror. You're giving them access to everything. Yes. They'll destroy reality. Maybe. They'll panic. Probably. They'll disagree. Definitely. Loki smiled. But they'll be free. The eye watched. The universe trembled. And something extraordinary happened. The sleeping consciousness didn't awaken. It listened. For the first time, the universe wasn't being controlled by one mind. It was being shaped by billions. Every hope, every fear, every memory, every dream, every mistake, all flowing together. The dream became unpredictable. And because it became unpredictable, the sleeping consciousness couldn't define it. It couldn't reset it. It couldn't erase it. It could only watch. The witness looked at Loki. You've made reality impossible to control. Loki smiled. Now you understand. The creature slowly disappeared. The throne dissolved. The eye closed. Time resumed. Across the Federation, stars moved again. Ships continued their journeys. Children continued playing. Captains continued arguing. Governments continued disagreeing. Wars ended. New conflicts began. Life continued. And on a quiet world at the edge of Federation space, 4 people stood beneath a sky full of stars. Thor looked at Loki. So, are you still secretly ruling a Starfleet sector? Loki looked toward the horizon. No. Thor smiled. Good. Loki paused. Not officially. Thor's smile vanished. Mara laughed. Elias shook his head. Father? Loki grinned. What? You promised. I promised to stop ruling the Federation. You didn't promise to stop being annoying. Loki placed a hand over his heart. That would be impossible. They laughed. For a moment, everything felt peaceful. But far beyond the Federation, something moved. A tiny green light appeared in the darkness. Then another. Then thousands. A voice whispered, "Every king eventually wants a kingdom." The screen went black. But Loki's voice answered from the darkness. Then it's fortunate. Pause. That I'm no longer a king. And somewhere beyond the stars, the green lights vanished. The Federation continued. Free. Uncontrolled. Uncertain. Alive. But the story wasn't over. Because the deepest secret of Sector 47 had not been discovered. The throne had been destroyed. The witness had vanished. The first world was sleeping. Yet one question remained. If Loki had truly sacrificed his throne, why was someone still sitting on it? What if the throne had never been destroyed? And what if the final ruler of Sector 47 was not Loki, not the witness, but someone nobody had suspected? For 7 minutes, the Federation believed everything was over. The multiversal gate was closed. The witness had disappeared. The first world had returned to its sleep. The throne had dissolved. And Loki was no longer a king. But 7 minutes after the universe resumed its normal rhythm, every Starfleet chronometer in Sector 47 stopped. Not malfunctioned. Stopped. Every second hand froze. Every digital display locked on the same time. Midnight. Then every screen displayed one sentence. The throne remains. Loki stared at the message. Thor looked at him. You said you destroyed it. I thought I did. Mara stepped closer. You thought. Loki's expression became serious. I've learned that certainty is overrated. Elias activated his scanner. There is something underneath the station. Loki looked at him. Underneath? Elias nodded. Very deep. How deep? The young officer checked the readings again. Deeper than the station. Mara frowned. The planet? No. Elias looked toward Loki. Deeper than the planet. The ground beneath them trembled. Loki's face changed. He understood. The throne was never in the station. Thor gripped Mjolnir. Where was it? Loki looked toward the stars. Everywhere. The sky changed. For 1 impossible second, every star in Sector 47 became green. Then the stars rearranged themselves. A pattern emerged. Not a constellation. A symbol. The same crown that had appeared on Loki's future fleet. But now there was something different inside it. A second symbol. The Federation insignia. Mara stared. What does that mean? Loki answered quietly. It means someone combined the throne with Starfleet. Thor looked at him. Who? Loki didn't answer. Because he already knew. The answer wasn't the witness. It wasn't King Loki. It wasn't any alternate version of himself. It was someone who had been there from the beginning. Someone who had watched Loki build Sector 47. Someone who had benefited from every decision. Someone who had never once asked for power. Mara whispered. The Federation? Loki nodded. Not the Federation. He looked toward the nearest starship. The people inside it. The revelation was worse than an invasion. Loki had spent decades secretly controlling Sector 47 because he believed people were too unpredictable to protect themselves. But now he discovered something even more dangerous. They had learned from him. They had studied his methods. his hidden networks, his contingency plans, his predictive algorithms, his magical architecture, his understanding of political manipulation. And when Loki sacrificed his throne, those systems didn't disappear. They became available. The Federation had inherited the gods' greatest secret. A way to predict the future. A way to calculate every possible threat. A way to eliminate uncertainty. A way to become Loki. Elias suddenly looked at his console. Father. Loki turned. Don't call me that when you're about to tell me something terrible. Elias gave a nervous smile. Then you're going to hate this. What? The throne has activated. Loki looked up. A massive structure appeared beyond the atmosphere. Not built from metal. Not stone. It was composed entirely of energy. Green lines connected thousands of worlds. A seat formed at the center. Then a figure appeared. Loki froze. It was Mara. But not the Mara standing beside him. This version wore a Starfleet admiral's uniform. A crown of green light hovered above her head. Her expression was calm. Cold. Perfect. Mara stared at her own face. What is that? Loki answered. Your future. The projection smiled. Not future. The figure stepped forward. Possibility. Loki's eyes narrowed. You've been watching. Everyone has been watching. The alternate Mara looked across the Federation. You taught us how. Mara shook her head. I never asked for this. No. The figure smiled. Loki did. Loki's expression hardened. What did I do? You showed us that control works. The alternate Mara raised one hand. Across Sector 47, Starfleet ships changed formation. Not violently. Perfectly. Every vessel moved into position. Every weapon locked. Every government channel opened. Every military command system synchronized. Loki watched in silence. The Federation had become one machine. A beautiful machine. Efficient. Orderly. Terrifying. The alternate Mara spoke. After you disappeared, the Federation faced the same threats you once prevented. Pirates. Wars. Invasions. Political collapse. Economic disasters. Civil unrest. We remembered the chaos. She looked toward Loki. And we remembered how peaceful your sector had been. Loki shook his head. It wasn't peace. It was stability. It was control. What's the difference? Loki stepped forward. Choice. The alternate Mara smiled. Choice is why people suffer. Loki's expression became cold. That's what I used to believe. And now I know better. The alternate Mara looked toward the stars. You will. She raised her hand. A fleet emerged from warp. Millions of ships. Federation. Klingon. Romulan. Vulcan. Andorian. Asgardian. Every civilization Loki had ever influenced. All united beneath one banner. The crown. Thor stared. This is impossible. Loki shook his head. No. He looked at the fleet. This is exactly what I was afraid of. Mara stepped beside him. What do we do? Loki looked at her. We give them something I never gave them. What? A choice. He opened every communication channel. The alternate Mara immediately interrupted. You cannot stop this. Loki smiled. I'm not going to. What? I want everyone to hear you. He transmitted her speech across the Federation. Her philosophy. Her plan. Her promise of perfect peace. Every citizen heard it. Then Loki transmitted himself. No one should follow me. The Federation listened. No one should follow her. He looked at the millions of ships. No one should follow anyone simply because they are afraid. Silence. You have seen what happens when one person controls the future. Loki looked at his own reflection. I know because I did it. He paused. And I nearly destroyed everything I loved. The alternate Mara stared. You think they will reject order? Loki smiled. No. He looked toward the billions of lives across the sector. I think they'll decide for themselves. One by one, ships began leaving the formation. A Vulcan vessel. Then an Andorian cruiser. Then a Klingon warship. Then a Starfleet destroyer. Then hundreds. Thousands. The great fleet fractured. Not into chaos. Into choice. The alternate Mara stared in disbelief. No. Loki watched. Yes. Her voice became furious. You've doomed them. No. Loki looked at her. I've trusted them. The throne began collapsing. But this time Loki didn't touch it. Nobody did. The people themselves rejected it. Across Sector 47, the green crown vanished from every ship. Every screen. Every uniform. every command center. And the Federation insignia returned. Not because someone ordered it. Because the people chose it. The alternate Mara disappeared. But before she vanished, she looked at Loki. You think this is victory? Loki shook his head. No. What then? Responsibility. The image disappeared. The throne collapsed. The green energy faded. And for the first time since Loki had entered the Federation, there was nothing controlling Sector 47. Not Loki. Not the Witness. Not King Loki. Not Starfleet Command. Nobody. The sector was finally free. Thor approached his brother. You really did it. Loki looked at him. I did something. What? I stopped trying to win. Thor smiled. That may be the most surprising thing you've ever done. Mara stepped closer. You know what happens next? Loki nodded. An investigation. Probably. Arrest. Possibly. Trial? Definitely. Loki sighed. I hate democracy. Mara smiled. You'll survive. Elias approached. Father? Loki turned. Yes. What are you going to do now? Loki looked across the stars. For decades he had been building kingdoms. For centuries he had been running from himself. He had lied, manipulated, conquered, protected, destroyed, saved, lost, found. And finally, he understood. A god did not need a throne. A ruler did not need subjects. And power did not need to become control. Loki looked at the Federation insignia. I think. He paused. I'm going to disappear. Thor frowned. Again? Temporarily. Mara smiled. You're going to travel. Yes. Where? Loki looked toward unexplored space. Somewhere nobody knows me. Thor laughed. That won't last. I know. Elias smiled. Can I come? Loki looked at him. You're asking permission? Elias shrugged. I'm learning. Loki smiled. Good. Mara looked toward the stars. Then where do we go? Loki pointed toward a distant region of space. Somewhere the maps end. Thor raised an eyebrow. And what is there? Loki's smile returned. That's the point. They boarded a small vessel. No royal insignia. No secret fleet. No hidden army. No crown. Just 4 people. And a galaxy. The ship entered warp. Sector 47 disappeared behind them. For the first time, Loki traveled without controlling the destination. He didn't know what waited ahead. He didn't know what enemies would appear. He didn't know whether the Federation would remain peaceful. He didn't know whether the Witness was truly gone. He didn't know whether the First World would ever awaken. And strangely, he was happy. Because uncertainty was no longer something he feared. It was something he had finally learned to live with. Hours later, the ship crossed beyond Federation space. The stars became unfamiliar. Thor looked toward the navigation screen. We're entering uncharted territory. Loki smiled. Excellent. Mara looked at him. Why does that sound dangerous? Because it is. Elias laughed. Then the ship's sensors suddenly activated. A signal. Weak. Ancient. Impossible. Loki looked at the display. What is it? Elias read the coordinates. It isn't a transmission. What then? A message. From whom? Elias looked at Loki. You. Loki's smile disappeared. The message began playing. A younger version of Loki appeared. The Loki who had first arrived on Vera. Before Sector 47. Before Starfleet. Before Mara. Before Elias. Before the throne. The recording spoke. If you're watching this. Present Loki stared. Then you've reached the end. Thor looked confused. End of what? The recording continued. I don't know if I'll remember creating this message. Loki's eyes narrowed. But if I did? The younger Loki smiled. Then I already know what you're going to ask. The recording paused. Why did I choose the Federation? Loki leaned closer. The answer came quietly. Because I knew one day the Federation would become the greatest force in the galaxy. Thor smiled. That sounds like you. But younger Loki continued. And because I knew something else. The recording changed. A map appeared. Not Sector 47. Not the Federation. Something far larger. A region beyond known space. Hundreds of galaxies. Thousands of civilizations. And at the center, a black star. The younger Loki whispered. The Federation isn't the end of the story. Present Loki stared. What is that? The recording answered. It's the beginning. The screen went dark. For several seconds nobody spoke. Then Thor looked at Loki. You knew. Loki shook his head. No. Mara stared at the black star. Then why did you leave us that message? Loki looked toward the darkness. I didn't. The ship's light suddenly went out. A voice echoed through the cabin. Not the witness. Not King Loki. Not the first world. A new voice. Ancient. Come. Amused. Hello, Loki. Loki slowly stood. Green energy formed around his hands. Thor grabbed Mjolnir. Mara reached for her phaser. Elias looked at the sensors. The voice continued. We've been waiting for the God of Mischief to leave the Federation. Loki smiled. Who are you? A response came from the black star. The people who remember you. Loki's expression changed. What? The voice laughed. Everyone else forgot. The stars disappeared. The black star expanded. And beyond it emerged an armada unlike anything Loki had ever seen. Not Starfleet. Not Asgardian. Not Klingon. Not Romulan. Something older. Something that had been watching the Federation from beyond the edge of known space. The ship's sensors screamed. Elias looked at the readings. Father? Loki turned. What? There are billions of ships. Thor smiled. Finally. Mara looked at Loki. Are you afraid? Loki stared into the darkness. Then he smiled. Not the smile of a king. Not the smile of a conqueror. Not the smile of someone who knew exactly what would happen. The smile of someone who had finally learned to enjoy the unknown. Yes. He looked toward the impossible fleet. But I'm curious. The ship accelerated. Toward the darkness. Toward the unknown. Toward whatever waited beyond the Federation. And as the stars blurred around them, Loki whispered, Let's see what happens. The screen fades to black. Then one final image appears. A Federation insignia. Beside it, a small green crown. Not a symbol of conquest. A reminder. A warning. A legend. Because once a god secretly ruled a Starfleet sector. He manipulated governments. He commanded fleets. He built an empire. He nearly became the very tyrant he feared. But in the end, Loki discovered something no throne could teach him. Power is not measured by how many people obey you. It is measured by how many people remain free when you finally have the power to control them. Loki could have kept the Federation on its knees. He could have become immortal. He could have ruled forever. Instead, he chose to be forgotten. And that sacrifice became his greatest victory. Because history may forget kings. Empires may disappear. Thrones may crumble. But freedom has a strange way of remembering the people who sacrificed everything to protect it. Somewhere in the Federation, children would one day hear stories about an impossible strategist who appeared during the darkest years of Sector 47. Some said he was a Starfleet officer. Some said he was an alien. Some said he was a myth. Some believed he never existed. But every generation told the same story. When the Federation was about to fall, someone stood between civilization and the darkness. Someone who refused the throne. Someone who chose uncertainty over control. Someone who looked into the impossible and smiled. And when asked who that person was, the oldest captains would simply look toward the stars. Then they would whisper one name. Loki. The god behind the Federation. Not because he secretly ruled it forever, but because, when he finally had the power to rule everything, he chose to let everyone else be free. And somewhere beyond the edge of known space, aboard a small ship traveling toward an enemy no map had ever recorded, Loki leaned back in his chair. Thor sat beside him. Mara studied the navigation system. Elias watched the unknown stars. Loki looked ahead. A new adventure was waiting. A new mystery. A new war. Perhaps even a new throne. But this time Loki knew the difference. He didn't need to sit upon it. He only needed to make sure. No one else was forced to. The ship vanished into the darkness. And the universe waited. The end.